Hey, in this video I'm going to be walking you through setting up split screen for local multiplayer games in Unity. So I'm in an empty project right now, and I'm going to create the stuff the player needs to kind of situate themselves in the world. So there's a plane, and I also want to create the player object itself. So I'm going to start with an empty game object, because I want to try my best to keep things organized, keep things split into separate concerns. And let me zero out this player position. And this part of the player is only concerned with its position and where it's located, and kind of interacting maybe with player input. So this is going to be where my player controller script is going to live, on this player empty game object. But what's under it, I'll put all the other stuff that it needs to do its job. So here's a capsule, and normally the capsule comes with a renderer, a mesh, and a capsule collider all together. But I want to split those concerns. What it looks like and how it collides and interacts with things are kind of separate. Or they can be treated separately. So I'm going to duplicate it so that I can make one of them the collision object and the other one the visuals object. And then for visuals I can remove the collider, and for collision I can remove everything except the collider. Alright. And so now this compound object still behaves the same. It still has all the same parts. They're just separated so that I can work with them more specifically in a cleaner way. Okay, so I want to set this up for split screen. So each player object is going to have its own viewport on the screen, its own separate viewport. So that means it needs its own camera to render into that viewport. So let's delete the main camera and then add a camera to the player. If you look over in the inspector, there's a viewport rectangle, and that's really what we're going to be messing with. But while I could set it up here, I want to be able to change it in code so it's more dynamic, and so that if we add more players, I can change what the viewport looks like. So for single player, maybe you take up the whole screen. For two player, maybe just half the screen, things like that. So let me create a script. Player controller. All right, and then drop that onto my player object and edit that script. So we know we have a camera, and we need to adjust its viewport rect. So let me get a reference to that camera, and it would also be helpful to know which player this is. So I'll put a player num value in there, and I can adjust that in the editor. Okay, when we start up, I want to check which player we are, and depending on which player we are, adjust the camera's viewport. So that comes through cam.rect, the rect property, and that's going to be a new rect. I can decide where that's going to be depending on which player this is. So let me say, for case that it's player 1, maybe we want this to be 0, 0, and then the width and height, let's do 0.5, 0.5. So this will be, I'll just set this up for 4 players at the same time, just to demonstrate what we can do with it. Okay, the second player is going to be offset a little bit to the right. Third player is going to be to the left, and change the Y value. And then the fourth player will be to the right and offset in the Y. Okay, and if none of this is true, if we don't have, if we're given a player number that's out of range here, invalid player number. Tell it which one is invalid, and we're good here. All right, so let's look at what this does. We need to hook up the camera. All right, so select the player, script is on there, assign the camera, and this would be great to create a prefab, so let me go and do that. Okay, so I've assigned all that, test it out. Okay, so it looks like the way that I described these coordinates, 0, 0 is in the lower left hand corner, and 0.5 is halfway across, and 0.5 vertically is halfway up. So these are normalized coordinates for the screen, whatever shape it is, however many pixels resolution it is. It figures it out for you based on normalized coordinates. So when I add more players, let's try just adding another one. Changing its player num. Let's do the other two as well. So it fills up the whole space, but maybe this isn't exactly what I want. Player 4 is going to be in the upper right corner, so I kind of need to swap all of my Y coordinates here, because I want player 1 to be at the top, player 2 to be at the top, player 3 to be at the bottom, and player 4 to be at the bottom. There we go. Okay, so let's disable player 3 just so we get a sense. Okay, cool, good. So now we have player 1, 2, 3 is missing, and 4. So looks good. All right, that's how it works. So you can set up viewports for each of your different players' cameras so that they can see different parts of the scene. You can also use layers so that you can filter out different objects so that some cameras can see it and some other cameras can't, to kind of change what the different players experience. So that's it. I'll see you in the next video.